everybody. It is episode 6 here on Hawai'i Football Now, and we are finding our stride, kind of like the University of Hawaii football team is. What a win it was this past Saturday, a 27-24 victory over 18th ranked Fresno State as the Poes improved to 3-3. Their first ranked win, or their first win over a ranked opponent in over 10 years since 2010, that memorable win over Nevada. And we have a lot to dive into. Backup quarterback playing, throwing winning touchdowns. We got all kinds of things to get into, a defense playing out of their mind. But we are glad to have you back with us, Jordan Helle, Hunter Hughes once again. And Hunter, let's just dive right into it here on our opening drive, if you will. Got some of the basics out of the way. Just how big of a win is this for this program in year 2 under Todd Graham? I
mean, honestly, in my mind, this is the biggest win in the last 10 years. If you go back to, the Mac era, which was kind of, before the Rolovich era, the last time we had some consecutive winning teams, and then came the Chow era, which we all know what happened there. And so in hindsight, yeah, like we played some really good teams under Coach Rolovich, but to play a Fresno State ranked team at home during homecoming, not really given any chance at all to beat them, and to come away with a win. I mean, Jordan, you and I are some of like the biggest UH supporters out there. I mean, we're doing this podcast, whether people are listening or not, because we love the team. We love UH football. Both of us were like, man, I want to be optimistic, but it's not looking good. And they did it, man. It's just unbelievable. And I from the people I've talked to in the community, I work at a golf course out here, and they all know that, I played football and stuff. So they bring it up to me. And, for those of us in the media that got to be down there and got to speak to some of the guys afterwards, it was so significant, man. It was huge. I think people are going to be reminiscing about that game as, the ghost game, if you will, that we beat an 18th ranked Fresno team that no one was there to watch. And it's quite a bummer because it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that is the one bitter aspect of what you could say maybe a little bittersweet in that regard. But we can get into that a little bit later, as well as we record this on Tuesday night. So some breaking news coming out, at least some reporting, nothing official, that we will get into in regards to possible attendance at the next home game, which is a few weeks off, not until October 23rd against New Mexico State. It was a win for the ages, for sure. I mean, you got to kind of rack your brain, right, to find a win bigger than this one in the last 11 years. When you go all the way back to that WAC championship season in 2010. I mean, you throw out like an Arizona on national television in week 0 in that magical 2019 season where they end up going to the Mountain West championship game the last year under Rolo. But it was a sub 500 Arizona team at the end of the day, right? The BYU bowl win maybe at the end of that season. But again, none of those teams were ranked, right? And we don't know what the season will hold for Fresno State going down the stretch over the second half of their season. But what they have done against Pac-12 opponents this year, that's a legit team, right? On any given Saturday, they have proven that they can hang with some of the top 20 teams in the country. And so this Hawaii team, it was quite the recipe that it took to come out with this victory, right? It's a 3-point win. Hawaii scores on their first 2 drives and then doesn't score at all, and then finally scores on their last 3 drives, basically, of the game. Prior to the slight adventure that was the kneel down experiment on the very last possession of the game. We can get into that a little bit later. But so they start strong and then they finish strong. And any coach will tell you, right, if you can win those battles, you have a chance. And then, of course, if you force 6 turnovers, you will have a darn good chance as well. They led 10-0, gave up 24 unanswered, and then rallied from 10 down when it was 24-14 to score the final 17 points and eventually win this thing. A tip of the cap as well to Matt Shipley, who was money on those 2 field goals, including the one to put them ahead with about, 3 minutes left or so in the ball game. We find out minutes before the ball game. You were actually there, Hunter. I was home here on Maui. I don't know how soon you knew, but watching the broadcast, we found out about 5 minutes before the game that Chevron Cordero was not going to play. He was unavailable in this ball game. And here comes the true freshman out of Texas, Braden Schager, who throws for 2 touchdowns, mixed success, but I think, acquitted himself well in that ball game. And again, the defense forcing 6 turnovers, 4 interceptions. Corey Bethley was a man possessed. And we usually kind of start on the offensive side of the football because that's kind of our bias. But I think it's only appropriate we start on the defensive side of the football. I mean, Corey Bethley, 9 tackles, 6 of them solo, the sacks, forced fumble, which was recovered by Jonah Laulu. He had 2 interceptions. He is the Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Week. I don't think there was any debate there. That's 2 weeks in a row, by the way, that Hawaii has garnered that honor with Cam Lockridge in his performance against New Mexico State the week prior. But he's also been named the Bronco Nagurski National Defensive Player of the Week. And there are different publications and organizations that kind of put out those honors. So it isn't the blanket be-all, end-all. But, I mean, it's hard to overstate the ball game that Bethley played.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, that was the first time that I've actually been down on our new field in the new TC Ching athletic complex, whatever the new name that they're kind of calling this, the new UH Stadium on campus. I had to take a couple of minutes just to look around at every angle of it. We as fans are able to see some of the flyovers and things like that, but just some of like the unique things. There's actually a row of skyboxes above the stands on the south side of the end zone. I mean, of the grandstands that I had no idea about. There's still some scaffolding kind of by the main coaching offices in the building that's connected to the basketball arena. But covered in kind of this cool Hawaii green, I guess that would be canvas material. And so, man, to be on that campus again, right on our home locker room, right next door to the field, really special. And of course, with it being homecoming, there were so many replays and reminiscing of old, famous teams, players, events in Hawaii football history. It was kind of setting the tone, being down there for what was about to be in store that night. And yeah, just being down there, I looked over at my friend Greg Salas many times, and with the way that the defense played as a whole, but primarily Corey Bethley, how he played, we looked over at each other and said, this is so inspiring. So inspiring. Even though they rallied and took a lead over us, we never gave up. We kept ourselves in that football game by the inspiring acts of our defense. And as a player, offense is supposed to score points. You're supposed to. But when defense can not only make stops, big time stops, and make turnovers happen, it's a juggernaut of energy for the entire team as a whole. And I mean, you felt it out there. There were certain moments that happened, particularly the first interception by Corey when they were driving down the field without any pain at all as an offense, and he dove in front of that guy and made that catch. It was an unbelievable flip of the script right there, because I think that was right after Schager got hit in the backfield and fumbled the football. It was such a critical moment that really changed the game as a whole.
Yeah, it's a defense that is starting, I think, to find an identity, right? And they took some of their lumps early in the season, on the field, and I think, in sort of the collective discussion from the fan base, from the media. They weren't good against the run. They were giving up big plays in the passing game, and they have sort of found a little bit out, right? They're going to give up yards. That's sort of what college football is. It's kind of what football is, to be honest, in 2021. I mean, you just look even at the NFL. Like, they gave up 117 yards rushing, but Fresno State averaged under 4 yards a carry. You at least sort of limit, right, what they do carry to carry. And look, they're not going to take the football away 6 times a game, but they are taking it away with more frequent regularity, and they are doing it with a ball hawking type of secondary, which we thought maybe was in the cards for this group. I mean, the interceptions by Bethley weren't they a fluke, right? I mean, he made some unbelievable reads on those. The Cortez Davis pick as well, the Hugh Nelson pick to close the game, a little opportunistic for sure, off the hands of the receiver there. But basically the first play, or the first drive that they were on the field, they forced a turnover. In the last drive they were on the field, they forced a turnover. And so a team that is able to maybe instill a further and further belief, I think, across the board in themselves, and then obviously, giving a little aid to an offense that we have seen flashes from, but still hasn't quite put together a 4-quarter game. And then when you throw a freshman quarterback out there, you get his back a little bit, right? And you let him go through a little bit of the tribulations as you go through. I mean, Quentin Frazier, 9 tackles, 9 tackles, I think 7 of them solo or so. He had 2 pass breakups. Kind of wanted to circle back to him in just a second. But Hughes Nelson stepping up big in place of Cam Lockridge, who was hurt basically on the opening kickoff. He had 2 pass breakups. He had a pick that we mentioned to close out the ball game. He forced a fumble. Cortez Davis broke up a couple of passes. He had the pick. Jake Haener threw 2 picks through 5 games coming in, 2 total, and he threw 4 against the University of Hawaii. That is something that I don't think a lot of people expected. For Haener to be the reason maybe that Fresno State lost this football game, or the reason why Hawaii won this football game, is making Jake Haener, who had looked so good through 5 games, look very, very pedestrian. He threw for 388 yards. Jalen Cropper still went, I think, right around 100, if not over 100 receiving yards. But the job that they did limiting, right? Give up some yards, sure. Give up some catches, sure. Completions, but keeping them out of the end zone, taking the football away. And I thought Bethley, who is this hybrid safety outside linebacker that can rush the passer and wreck you, that can drop in coverage and find a way to intercept. And then you got Quentin Frazier, who's kind of a similar type of defender, that rover type. I thought he was really good against Jalen Cropper, who is one of the best receivers in the country. And that is not hyperbole. You look at some of his tape, you look at some of his numbers, what he did against UCLA. I thought Frazier covering him in the slot all night long. Again, he gave up catches, but that was no easy assignment. And 19 was covering him a lot. Bethley covered him a couple of times. I mean, these are safeties covering slot guys, right? I mean, you could say there wasn't a nickel corner on him most of the time, but I was just so impressed by some of the individual performances and the way they played off of each other on top of that.
Yeah, no, I like a lot of what you're saying right there. And, even just looking at the stat line right now, Fresno ran for 117 yards and threw for almost 400 yards, even with those 4 interceptions. And so, looking back to where our team has kind of played this year, the scouting report for us has always been, you get it done on the ground and you're going to handle us without any problem. And so I'm honestly looking at the stat line, Jordan, I'm a little curious as to why they didn't try to make their presence known a little bit more on the ground. And I don't know if, it's because of a rivalry game. You've got a great quarterback in Jake Haener, great passing attack, a couple of great wide receivers on the outside. And in their mind, because, when we play Fresno, kind of everything goes out the door. We're going to try to beat them any way that we can. It's almost kind of like a cockiness on their part of, we can run against them, but we're choosing to pass. You know what I mean? Like I almost get that kind of a feeling here where they're weak in the secondary and we're going to try to attack them there as well. I don't know. It's peculiar when your QB has 2 interceptions. You already start thinking maybe we go on the ground a little bit more. When he has 3, when you've got the lead, you definitely go to the ground a little bit more. I'm not trying to take anything away from our guys at all. Played unbelievable, inspiring football. It's more just they had that game and they let us back in. And being down there, I was amazed that they were still sending guys way down the field trying to take these crazy shots when it felt like we had kind of blown it already, even though we were doing everything we could to stay in the game. Do I make sense here? I don't know.
No,
I feel like I'm going on a rant.
No, I think it's great perspective, right? Because again, at the end of the day, look, Hawaii was +5 in the turnover margin and
Yes.
won by 3 points, right? And it took a
Yes.
Herculean effort on many different fronts for Hawaii to pull this out. It's not like Hawaii came out and just dominated Fresno, right? And
No.
traded punches with them. Like they followed a game plan, they executed it, no doubt, but they were very opportunistic. And again, +5 in the turnover margin, you only win by 3, and Fresno State's knocking on the door at the very least to kick a game with tying field goal and send this to overtime. So you add some perspective, which I think is very fair, right? There's no doubt about it. And I think it is fair to point out, it's like, look, Fresno State had to play a little part in blowing a 10-point lead as well, right? The insistence on continuing to throw the football. I'm with you there. The success they had running the football with a guy who's done it for years now in Ronnie Rivers as their lead back. And the other fact was, for a Hawaii team that hasn't necessarily had the most reliable pass rush this year, that they got after Haener. They got after him, and that was not a great offensive line in front of him, particularly in pass protection. I thought their left tackle, our guys, the university, they dominated that matchup.
Yeah.
Whether it was Bethley coming off that side, whether it was Jonah Laulu, that left tackle, he's probably played better days. Yes. And Hawaii got after Haener, and they hit him, and they hit him repeatedly. And he came out of the game at one point, right? We saw the backup quarterback.
Yeah, the lefty.
To be quite honest, watching Fresno State games this season, that's kind of normal. Like, he takes a lot of hits. One, because they throw it so much. Two, because he holds onto the ball a little bit, and he's a guy that is willing to let his receivers get downfield. But that offensive line isn't great. And so, when you run the football with at least decent success, you would think, especially with the 10-point lead second half, maybe we'd see a little bit more of that running game, but that wasn't the case. And it kind of harkened back, right? And not that you ever hope to have a guy hurt or anything like that, but it was something that Todd Graham, I remember, interviewing him last season before the 2020 season came in, and he would often talk about the history of Hawaii football. And one thing that he always brought up when he would bring his Tulsa teams here was that you would feel it. Like, you would leave Hawaii, you would go back home, and you'd be sore for like weeks. And there was a knock-on effect. And he talked about the defenses that would come, right? And Hawaii teams, maybe they give up some points, maybe they give up some yards, but they will punch you in the mouth and you will feel it. And there was a bit of that, right? Good that Jake Haener made it out of there. He's going to be healthy and he's going to have a lot of success throughout the rest of the year. But I guarantee you, he was hurting on that plane ride home. And that is something that Todd Graham had talked about coming into this program before they even played a game, was that he wanted to instill a bit of that. He wanted to see his defenses kind of emulate some of the teams of the past where, hey, you were going to feel it. And there was a bit of that. There was a bit of that this past Saturday. And I think that was, there's been times throughout this last 2 years, but I think more than any other game that we have seen a Todd Graham coach team, that defense made their presence felt, not just the turnovers, but the physicality that they brought to that team. And they took advantage of a mismatched offensive line.
Totally. And, along with that, I felt like our D-line played their best game of the whole year. Interceptions, though, the DBs and the safeties get the credit and the accolades for actually catching the ball, but that doesn't come without the quarterback being hurried. Especially at the Division I level, quarterbacks, especially like Jake Haener, if they're not feeling pushed or rushed, they're not putting a ball anywhere other than where they exactly want it. That's just the truth of it. And so that doesn't happen unless the guys are getting through Fresno's front, which I noticed. And I wanted to kind of bring this up, Jordan, just being down there. Fresno's last possession, they were doing a beautiful job of running down the field on us, killing the clock, and slowly bringing that game to a close. And the pick that he threw was at the 22nd mark. They could have kicked a field goal right there to end, to push it to overtime, but they continued to take shots. So in some ways, on top of us playing really inspiring football, they have no one to blame but themselves. On a lot of fronts here, they are a better football team than us, but whether we were more resilient, we fought harder, we capitalized, No doubt in my mind, we deserve to win that game because of their mismanagement. And in a lot of ways, from my perception, they're kind of hi maka maka, we're bigger than you guys, and we're gonna beat you on the last second play at home and ruin your homecoming. So good enough for you guys. It was so fun after the game hearing all the guys yell, "Have a nice plane ride, have a nice flight home." I mean, I heard it from so many of the boys when they were running on the field. It was magical.
Yeah, this was an all-time defensive performance, no doubt about that. And again, some numbers that you probably won't see again in terms of turnovers, in terms of what some of the individual performances were put up, but it's something I think that can be built on, no doubt about that, and especially up front with that pass rush. We still haven't even really got to the offense. I'll tell you what, we'll take our halftime break. We will be right back here on Hawai'i Football Now, and we got a lot to talk about on that side of the football as well as we continue recapping this big win over then nationally ranked Fresno State.
This is Hawai'i Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, we hit the second half, and it was a second half that saw the offense go through some lulls in the ball game, but also end up finding a way to punch in a couple of scores late in the fourth quarter. Again, Braden Schager comes in, the true freshman out of Dallas. I don't know when he found out he was starting, but we found out basically 10 minutes before kickoff, and he went out and he acquitted himself well. You know, he only really had to involve himself in key situations. There were stretches of the ball game where they really relied on the running game, particularly that wildcat look with Calvin Turner, but he ends up going 11 of 27 for 116 yards. He does throw 2 touchdowns. Caleb Phillips on a nicely designed play, and then the alley-oop, if you will, to Calvin Turner that got them right back in the football game and ended up tying it up. Hawaii ran for 232 yards. That's 5.3 yards per rush. Helle Hunter went for 127 on 21 carries. Deidre Parson had 4 carries for 40 yards, averaging 10 yards a total. He also had a couple of catches for 8 yards. Nick Martiner, 2 catches for 33 yards. The bulk of that coming on that big third down on the opening drive that put Hawaii on the doorstep, which later Calvin Turner punched in on the ground. Turner had 59 rushing yards on 14 carries, 4 catches, 41 yards, and the touchdown catch as well. Caleb Phillips, 3 catches, 34 yards, and a touchdown. And that was it. Those are the only guys that touched the football on offense. We didn't see Jared Smart come up with a catch. We didn't see some of Jonah Pinokia, but that's not necessarily a negative comment or anything like that. They found a way to march down the field in large part because of that rushing attack and timely completions, right? And there were some moments, I think, in there, Hunter, where we saw them, we saw deep ball after deep ball after deep ball that ended up falling incomplete. We saw them run that wildcat look over and over and over again. But then they were able to right the ship. They were able to find some good looks with Phillips and again, that rushing attack. But yeah, we'll kind of start there, Hunter. This rushing attack and what we have talked about and sort of some of the keys for this team, that is clearly an emphasis. They want to run the football. Bo Graham, the offensive coordinator, wants to run the football. They've done it to varying degrees of success, but this performance against Fresno State really set the tone.
Oh, totally. Other than Corey Bethley on the defensive side of the football, the other person that I felt was just so inspiring to watch was Helle Hunter. He's not a super big guy. Some running backs, have those shoulders and they're built a little thicker. This guy isn't that. He's kind of more of a shifty guy, but was not afraid of taking hits and giving hits. There were several times when he was headed for the sideline, but elected to drop a shoulder on a Fresno Bulldog, which as players, we love that. We absolutely love that when you could go out of bounds, but you elect to inflict a little pain on your rival. And I know the rest of the team sees that too. It gets everybody a little juiced up, especially the offensive line, when you show them that you're not afraid to take a hit. And there's kind of an unsaid thing in football when you do little things like that, that it's just inspiring for everyone who's a part of it. And yeah, I think for a brand new rookie quarterback, first D1 start, for us to have the running attack the way that we did, both from him and from Calvin Turner. It was able to open up the little success that we had passing the ball because of how well we did running the rock. So I think that was a huge thing for us, because you're not relying on your freshman quarterback to make plays as much and potentially risk turning the ball over. If you know that, hey, we're getting it done in the trenches right now, hand it off to Day Hunter. He wants the ball. Calvin obviously wants the ball as well. Let's let those guys do their thing.
Yeah, and I like the point you made, especially, it takes a lot of pressure off a guy making his first career start as a true freshman, national television against a nationally ranked team. And, let him to breathe easier and know that maybe he doesn't have to hit every pass, but just hit the timely ones. And he did. You played the position. What did you see from Schager? What did you see from him out there in that first start? And, what'd you like?
Well, first of all, I kind of want to address, Chevin not playing from a team perspective. I think Schager's known this whole week that he was going to be the starter. From different guys that I talked to, they knew that Chevin had a shoulder ever since that interception in that New Mexico game. If you recall, he kind of ran over and laid the wood on the guy who intercepted the ball. He really hit that guy pretty good, and just in the adrenaline of the moment of the game, didn't feel anything, but afterwards felt the effects of that. And so because of that, I have no doubt in my mind that Chev probably was pretty limited this last week at practice. And so Schager already was taking reps with the ones. And I know in the quarterback room, they were letting him know, hey, it's probably going to be you this week. Be ready. We're still watching Chevin's shoulder, but be ready for when Fresno comes this Saturday. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there. I was impressed with the kid. Another backup quarterback, Armani Edin, is a good friend of mine. He had shown me different highlights of him and was always impressed with his release. Super quick, very powerful, short release. And I knew that he could sling the rock. Now, being able to throw the football and then playing well at the Division I level are two completely different things. So much happens in the scope of a game, especially against a ranked opponent. You get hit, that 3.5, 4 second buzzer in the back of your mind kind of turns off whenever you've got different things to think about. You're feeling pressure here. You've got a coach yelling at you over there for something that you didn't do. There's just so much happening. And to stay calm, cool, and collected, I was super impressed with how he handled that situation. I mean, coming into your first Division I game against a ranked opponent and not throwing any interceptions, I don't care about any touchdowns. And he had 2 of them. You've got a win in my book. Me and Greg Salas both agreed he should get an A for his performance out there. Sure, he got hit late on one play and fumbled the ball. That will just come in time of knowing, okay, I can step up in the pocket, but if I choose to roll to the left, which is what he did, you better start sprinting because there's a guy on your butt, whether you like it or not. And that's exactly what happened. But I was super impressed with him.
Is there any reason to think when Chevin Cordero is healthy, we are unaware of exactly how long it is going to be. Coach Graham kind of giving a general timeline during media availability today. I mean, I think he said something along the lines of like a week and a half to like a month, right? And he's not going to give much, and we understand that. And Nevada in a couple of weeks, I'm sure won't know, right? At least officially, there may be some rumblings or something like that, but then nothing official is going to come out. And yes. So when Chevin is ready, is there any reason to think that this is Schager's job now?
I think it's a little too early to tell. The timing of this is pretty good with us having a bye week this week, where everybody is able to kind of put their feet up. And especially after beating a ranked opponent, I know the majority of this week is going to be cruise control. big time cruise control for everybody. To go from camp, having a week 0 game, Hawaii usually has that week 0 game, and then getting pounded a few weeks and then finding something to start to build off of. I know they're going to reward the guys. And so I think we're going to see a little bit of that. And with that, Shevin can get healthy again. The quarterback position is a tough one to kind of say what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, because so much of being the leader of the team falls to you as the quarterback, whether you like it or not. And from the vibe that I've gotten and just what I've observed, Shevin's still very much one of the leaders of that team. And so to pass that baton off to a redshirt freshman, sure, he had a good game, but it wasn't like Joe Burrow stats, of 20 for 24, 4 touchdowns and 400 yards. You know what I mean? It was a good game for him. I don't want to take any credit away from him, but it's not like he went out there and dug his flag into the middle of the field and said, "I'm here." I don't feel like that happened. So we will see. It's awfully tough, especially here in Hawaii, to sit the St. Louis Hawaii boy from quarterback. However, I will say this coaching staff is from Texas. They're very much a fan of bringing sort of that mainland Texas style of doing football, of doing life, trying to bring that to the islands. And from what I've seen and what I've heard as well, they favor this guy. They like him a lot. So I think that's worth mentioning, because all of that will be put into play for the second half of this season. Because, man, if we can beat a ranked Fresno team, even though we're 3-3, we're 1-1 in conference, this season is far from over. We could really make some headway here. And people might laugh at us, but hey, we just beat 18th ranked Fresno. Who knows what could happen in conference play? We might even still have a shot at the title. So there's a lot of season yet to play. And they're going to make a decision to best help us win any way that we can.
Yeah, I think, regardless of what the preference is within that building, one thing I'm pretty certain of, they're not going to say who's starting against Nevada, right, until just about kickoff in a couple of weeks' time. That I'm pretty certain of. This huge win. It's on national television, right? It's in that late window, one of the few games. There are a lot of eyeballs, at least for the folks who are staying up, right? We talked about it. First win over a nationally ranked opponent since 2010. What's the impact of something like this for the program in terms of building, buying in to what Coach Todd Graham's staff is implementing, getting these guys on board, if not that they haven't already been already, but trying to build, right? You've talked about it, right? There maybe some convincing to be done within that locker room, right? You've got it's always a little bit of a transition when you got a new coaching staff in there. You got guys who were recruited by the previous regime, you got guys recruited by the new staff. And so there's always a little bit of a transition, which doesn't always necessarily have to be smooth for it to be successful. But a win like this, what does this do?
Man, it is, just for a player's perspective, you've essentially hit the restart button on your season. My good friend RJ Hollis said that this last week. You have that opportunity. They earned this. I think some of that drama stuff that we were talking about within the team is kind of squashed in some ways. Winning heals everything. Winning heals drama between you and another player, you and a coach. Even if you know he hates your guts and you hate him, hey, we won, we got a hug. It's just the way it works. Winning is a magical thing. And honestly, with what we're seeing with that announcement that Governor Ige could make some changes for allowing fans, I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that we beat 18th ranked Fresno. I really do. It was that sort of a powerful moment to be a UH football fan again. And honestly, the reason why I say that is the fact that fans weren't there. It's a nationally televised game. We're playing against a ranked opponent. We win. It's our homecoming, and it's Fresno. That was that was a Kairos juggernaut moment for our program that we missed. I really believe that, because if you have a national broadcast showcasing our school, our brand new facility, and then everyone's looking around, where are the fans at? You know what that does to our recruiting? Yeah, they beat an 18th ranked opponent, but man, no one can go to the game. I'm going to the mainland to play somewhere else. We had a once in a lifetime opportunity here, and we blew it. Not anything to do with Hawaii. I mean, government, state of Hawaii, that is supposed to have our back. We're repping the H on our helmet across our chest, and our boys played so inspiring. I'm at a loss for words, Jordan, because that really was a chance to solidify us as a program moving forward. I really feel that.
Yeah, it's one of those games, right, where you try and bring recruits in on visits. Hey, we want them on the sideline for the big rivalry game. It's, you would imagine it's
or the highlights, right? On the jumbotron. See, look at the legacy that you're going to be a part of.
Yeah, and it's hey, look, it's been 11 years since they've won a game like this, right? And you hope it's not going to be 11 more years before something like that. But as you mentioned, it is an opportunity that wasn't taken full advantage of. And you mentioned some of the reports coming out, and the one that we saw earlier this afternoon from KHON2. Wanted to give credit here, Nicole Napu'unoa and Manolo Morales on this story. And they are saying that as cases and hospitalizations continue to drop, Governor Ige says he is working with the University of Hawaii to loosen restrictions and could allow up to 1,000 people at Ching when the Rainbow Warriors host New Mexico State in their next home game, the very next home game, which isn't until October 23rd. Will likely be limited to the team's family members. I would imagine folks that sort of fit that bill. I don't know, friends and family, close acquaintances of players. You can get to 1,000 pretty quickly when you're talking about that. That has basically been the request of the University of Hawaii, right? 1,000 vaccinated, fully masked, distance within that facility. That there seemed to be some momentum prior to this Fresno game. You basically had a slew of officials, public officials, whether it was the lieutenant governor, the House Speaker, others that seem to be on board with the plan. In fact, I think Lieutenant Governor Green said 9,000 fully vaccinated and masked. Fine with him. But it remained zero besides the band, media, staff, and I think, the cheer squad and like the Rainbow Dance, the dance team may have been there. You have spoken about the missed opportunity. What would getting 1,000 people in there, what would that mean? What would that signify? And really boils down to, as you mentioned, just from a player standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, like just how good would that feel for those guys to get their parents in there, their siblings, their family members, even if it's not the greater public, just having family in there for those guys. How big is this? If indeed, again, sorry, Hunter, not to cut you off, but again, these are reports. I haven't seen anything official from the governor's office, from the state, from the Department of Health. These are merely reports that we are seeing from local media at this point. That is all we can verify.
Yeah, I think, I just put myself in the player's shoes. If I was on the team right now and then that was able to happen, it would be a pretty emotional thing, a very impactful thing to know that we're seen. I had a moment after the game with some of the red shirt guys, some of the freshmen that were up in the stands, and introduced myself and just let them know that, hey, I know that people haven't been able to be here, but like, we love and support you guys. You're not alone. We see you. And this is significant. Thank you for all the work and effort that you put in, because I know how intense it is. And so I think for players to have their family there would be huge. And playing for Hawaii is a different thing, man. It's such a tight-knit community. You go to the grocery store, and someone recognizes your face and they give you a little encouragement like, hey man, you play great. I see guys around town. It's such a small place that it makes it really special. And when that community isn't able to be brought in to see the game, when we have such a true and loyal season ticket holding fan base, and not get to experience this resilient and fighting football team that's inspiring for all other elements of culture. That's the purpose of sports, is to give us the wind behind our sails to know, hey, if they can do it, I can do what, is in front of me right now. That's the impact of this, especially with not being able to watch our games as easily as what we might hope because of the current situation with, television broadcast. It needs to happen. It absolutely needs to happen. People are hungry for live events again. And with football season in place, I don't need to say anything else. I think everyone is on page for this.
Yeah, I'm with you. We talked at length about it in last week's episode. The thing is, they're running out of time, right? There are only 3 more home games. So they got to start making some decisions here quick if indeed this is going to be the case. We will keep everybody updated as best we can on the pod again, because there's no game coming this week. So we should know a lot more by the time we record next week, Tuesday. Again, we're recording this episode Tuesday evening on October 5th. And as of right now, it sounds like there are discussions being had that may allow for 1,000 people to attend the next Hawaii home game on the 23rd. Hunter and I could continue rapping about this Fresno State game for like 2 more hours minimum.
Yeah.
But we're kind of on a time schedule. So we'll sort of table the discussion now. There is a lot more to get into, including what this means for the team going forward. Whereas now they sit 3-3, as you pointed out, Hunter, 1-1 in the Mountain West. They've got the other top dogs in the West Division left in front of them. San Diego State comes to town. They got the trip to Reno next week, which we will get into. And so they're very much in the mix, in the conversation in terms of that West Division race, trying to get into the Mountain West title game. And then now at 3-3, they need to basically go 4-3 at the very least to get to bowl eligibility, which would be big as well, as they try to build on that New Mexico Bowl win off of last season. So we'll dive into all of that next week. We got a whole lot to talk about. We have had the conference realignment conversation that we have been trying to get to as well here on the pod. We can get into that next week. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit that to us on all the social media platforms. But it is time for overtime now. I'll go first, Hunter. Over on the other podcast that I do, shameless plug here, Let's Talk Sports with Kanoa Leahy and myself, which you can also catch on all of the ESPN Honolulu platforms. Made a little wager. It was the NFL game over the past weekend that nobody cared about besides the two of us. Kanoa's a Lions fan. I am a Bears fan. And again, that was way down on the watching priority, the viewing priority. But I just like to say for all those people out there, the Bears won. So take that, Kanoa. Take that. I don't like to kick, the Lions fans when they're down, because they are often very much down. And I had zero confidence in the Bears after their Cleveland Browns stinker the week before. But hey, go Bears. We got to take the wins when we can get them, because they're not going to be a whole lot more throughout the rest of the season until we play the Lions again. Man. So that's my little tidbit at the end of this one. But the floor is yours, Hunter, as we close out episode 6.
Jordan, I feel like we just bonded a little bit, man. I'm from Lake Zurich, Illinois originally, and I am a diehard Bears fan. So
there you go. There you go. They might be calling you here soon if Justin Fields getting beat up like he had at least in that first game that
they've already made it run with one red rifle. I don't think they're going to give it a try with a second one. So but hey, if they gave the call, I would probably entertain it, even though I'm not a real big fan of Nagy at the moment with what he's doing in the Windy City. Outside of that, if you guys are around, connected to the golf world, they announced today the 5th rendition of The Match on the Golf Channel. And that's going to be taking place in a little over a month between, I love it, Bryson DeChambeau against Brooks Koepka. If you're not familiar with that, that is a fierce rivalry. The two do not like each other. And in a game full of honor, not really paying much attention to other people and it being an individual thing, it's always fun when there's a little bit of drama and then a little wagering on the line too. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, as am I. It's a 12-hole match. It's obviously made for television. You know, they made nice during the Ryder Cup, but we know that that
they still don't like each other.
No, they don't like each other at all. That was the best.
I would love if Koepka just caught Bryson with just a false crack on the first tee, and then they ended the broadcast. I love it.
That would be great. Let them work it out. Man to man there. That'd be funny. Yeah, I can't wait for that. I'm sure we'll maybe bring that up once the time comes. Again, Hunter. Once again, man, this has been a lot of fun. We still have a lot to talk about, and it's kind of nice that the bye week comes this week, and we can continue the Fresno conversation coming off of this big win. And you can check that out next week as well. Once we get to episode 7 of Hawai'i Football Now. Hunter, Jordan, saying so long. Again, send us your questions on any of the platforms. Comment on the Facebook post. Comment on the YouTube video. You can hit me up at Jordan Helle Hunter at All Around Athlete ATH on Twitter as well. Hunter, have a good one, man.
You've been listening to Hawai'i Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.